Hi, everyone. I see you coming in. I'm giving you the opportunity to come on in. I know you do not want to miss this session that is coming up. I promise you. I certainly hope that you enjoyed the sessions that you were coming from, speaking about agribusiness and the value chain, looking at food security, certainly some fantastic and well-aligned topics for this SDM Summit for 2021. We are entering the session where we speak about leveling up for high performance and breakthrough success, whether it is within digital transformation, whether it's entrepreneurship, whether you are an employee or an employer. We all need to level up even amidst a crisis. Thank you so very much for being here. We've seen your questions about getting the recordings. The recordings will be gifted to you from the OECS. We thank you for your participation, and we ask that you save your questions for afterwards and you put it in the chat. So the person I'm about to introduce, who is our keynote speaker for this afternoon, really needs no introduction, but we shall do it anyway because he is deserving of it. Jack Canfield, from his earliest days teaching inner city high school students how to discover their potential and succeed no matter what their circumstances, to becoming a world-renowned transformational speaker and trainer who has conducted more than 2,500 workshops and events all over the world. Jack Canfield has devoted his life and his career to helping others achieve their personal definition of success and create lives of greater joy, meaning, and fulfillment. When we speak about personal development and peak performance, we think of Jack Canfield, founder of the $1 billion chicken soup for the soul publishing empire, multiple New York Times best-selling author, 2.5 million subscribers and followers on social media. He sold over 5+ million books worldwide, featured guest on 1,000+ TV and radio shows. He has trained 2,900+ Canfield Success Principles trainers in 107 countries. He's been inducted into the National Speakers Association Speakers Hall of Fame. And if you don't think that's enough, he's also a Harvard graduate with a master's degree in psychological education. Let me tell you something, SDM 2021 is excited to have the one and the only Jack Canfield as our keynote speaker as we discuss leveling up for high performance and breakthrough success. Please show him your love and your support in the comments. Over to you, Jack.
Thank you, Dr. Terry. Appreciate it very much. And thank all of you for joining us today. I'm going to share my screen with you. I have some slides that I'm going to be sharing with you as I give my talk. My goal today is to help you learn how to go further and faster with less effort, more profit, less struggle, and to get to where you want to go, leveling up to high performance in whatever area is important for you in your life. So let me get my slides up here real quick, and we shall begin. All right. So that's me, of course, and we're going to be talking about how to be a greater high performer and produce breakthrough success in every area of your life. Now, I just want you to know, I've been teaching this all over the world. As Dr. Terry said, I've been teaching this in Mexico, in Iran, in Qatar, in Dubai, in Bahrain, in Moscow, Russia, in Mumbai, India. This is one of my students. When I met him when he was 19, on the right there, Kabir Khan, and he's just recently over there. I have him in my new book, and he introduced me to the Prince of Johor, and we're doing a whole project now to raise up the consciousness of success of an entire state in the country of Malaysia. So all this comes with a lot of experience. And my goal is to help you get from where you are to where you want to be, wherever that might be. And we're going to help clarify what that is today for you. As I said, our main objective, learn how to go further and faster with more impact in the world, more profit for you in terms of if you're in a corporation or even if you're in a nonprofit, how do you have more impact? How do you have more funds to work with? And how to do that with less struggle. I want you to be like this mouse that doesn't get caught in the maze, but can cut through all that and get right to the cheese. So that's what we're doing. And the promise I make all the people that work with me is you can double your financial success and double your social impact, double your time off. Now, that may sound like a big promise, but most people I know that come on these kind of programs don't have that much real time off. So we can double our time off. We can get more done and still have more fun, have more balance in your life between work and family and home, and also achieve greater levels of happiness and fulfillment at work and at home. And I want you to realize that life is like a combination lock. If you know the right numbers in the right order, you can open it and have anything you want. The problem is most people are missing a number. And if you have like three numbers, but you're missing the fourth one, doesn't care how hard you work, doesn't matter where you went to university, you're never going to get that lock open. So, and you also have to have the numbers in the right order. So a lot of you are doing a lot of the right things, but somehow psychologically, when we talk about mindset and so forth, you're not doing it in the order that it needs to be done in order to produce the results that you want. So we're going to be talking about that. And it doesn't matter who you are, whether you went to university or not, doesn't matter what color you are, doesn't matter how old you are, how long you've been on the job, whatever it might be. If you know the combination to this lock called success, you can produce it over and over and over. It doesn't matter where you're starting from. All right, so I'm going to be teaching you a system of success. A system is something that produces a consistent result. And if you want to go deeper after this talk and you want to know more, I have two books out, the Success Principles Workbook. That's what I'll be teaching from. And also, I wrote the foreword to two books. I'm going to share some of that with you too. One was called The $1 Billion Secret. A friend of mine in Poland who interviewed 20 billionaires and basically in 17 countries, 17 different industries, and found out what are their success secrets. And then also, I wrote the foreword for a book called Homeless to Billionaire about a guy named Andres Pira, who was homeless in Thailand at 19. And by the age of 35, he was worth $3 billion. In fact, he brought me over to Thailand. He wrote this book and he asked me to write the foreword for it. And I was over there and he said, the reason I was successful is I watched the movie and read the book, The Secret, which I'm featured in as a teacher. And also he read the Success Principles and applied that. So I'm just only sharing all this with you to give you enough credibility, if you will, so that you'll actually do the work and realize that this is something that will get you where you want to go if in fact you do it. We always say the principles always work if you always work the principles. He invited me to Thailand along with Mike Tyson, the heavyweight world champion at one time, and a couple of other people to actually present at a conference he was putting on. That's where I got to meet Mike. So let's delve into the principles. Number one, you must take 100% responsibility for your life and your results. Now, notice it doesn't say 99%. You know, how would you like to be married to someone who is 99% committed to monogamy? Probably not. You know, you want that 100% commitment. And you have to be 100% committed to these principles in order to have the results that you want to get. And responsibility, most people, they think responsibility is kind of a burden, but responsibility, as you'll see in a minute, actually frees you up. It empowers you. So we always say that 99% of, if you take 99%, it's going to be difficult because every day you have to decide, is today the day I'm going to do this? Is today the day I'm going to exercise? Is today the day I'm going to do my 5 action steps that'll get me toward my breakthrough goal? But if you're 100% committed, you just wake up and do it. There's no conversation, no discussion. If it's raining out or it's, you know, you're in a bad mood or whatever, you're 100% committed. So Teddy Roosevelt, who was a former president of the United States, said once, if you could kick the person in the pants responsible for most of your trouble, you wouldn't sit for a week or for a month rather. And the idea being that you are the one who's creating your life. We always want to blame other people, other countries, other things like that, but that's not the case. Now, if you got nothing out of today's talk, but this would be worth it. And I want you to write this down. E plus R equals O, and whatever that is in French, if it's being translated, but E plus R equals O. And this may not translate in French exactly, but you're going to learn 3 words in a moment. Event plus response equals outcome. And you have an event in your life. You then respond to that event, and that produces an outcome that you get. And we all want better outcomes. We want more success. We want better documents. We want better negotiations. We want better deals. We want more profit. We want more engagement. Whatever it is you're looking to get more of, that's the outcome you want. And the E is the way the world just is. There are events happening all the time. The pandemic is an event. There was an economic crisis in 2008 and 2009. That was an event. Now, some people got really wealthy during that. Some people lost a lot of money. It was the same event, but people did different things. So what I've spent my life doing is studying the millionaires, the billionaires, the top government officials, the generals in the army, the people, the movie stars, the top salespeople, the Olympic athletes, and finding out how do they live their life? What are the principles that success people live their life by? And one of them is called 100% responsibility. So this formula of E plus R equals O, what happens, most people, when they don't get the outcome they want, what they do instead of changing their response, which would be doing something different to create the outcome they want, what they tend to do is blame the event. They blame the government, they blame the president, they blame, the economy, other countries, whatever. The reality is that leaves you powerless. Your power is in your response. And the word responsibility means the ability to respond, to change our response. So think of this as a mathematical formula. 2 plus 2 equals 4. 2 plus 2 will always equal 4. If the world's doing 2 and you're doing 2 in response, you're always going to get 4. So you're all here at this conference because you want something more. You want more impact. You want more profit. You want more food. You want more trade. Whatever it is you want, the reality is you can only get it by doing something different. And you're hearing from speakers today and tomorrow and yesterday, whenever this conference is going on, they're teaching you things that they have found work, but you have to put them into practice. You've got to do them. The action is where the rubber meets the road. So as long as 2 plus 2 is what you're doing, you're going to get 4. If you want something different, the pandemic comes along, the hurricanes come along, what happens? All of a sudden, the world's doing 1. If you keep doing 2, you end up with 3, which is less than what you really want. And so we've got to change it. And sometimes it goes down to 0, as we know with the pandemic. It's really tough for a lot of us for a long time. In my company, we had to stop doing live trainings. Everything we do now is on Zoom like this. However, as we got good at doing that, we found we could have people from 47 different countries come in and take our trainings. So actually, we don't talk about the new normal. We talk about the new better, because we're reaching more people now with less expense because of all the travel that we don't have to do and they don't have to do. But you have to look for that. Now, the change is what's really critical. Now, every adversity carries with it the seed of an equal or greater benefit. This is a statement by Napoleon Hill. He wrote a book called Think and Grow Rich. It's all about mindset. And your mindset determines your skill sets, which determines your outcomes. And so we have to have mindset, skill set, and action to produce the results we want. But every adversity creates a seed of an equal or greater benefit, but you have to look for the seed and you have to water it. And what happens for us is we had to learn how to pivot and do things online, just like this conference is online. I had a contract with Bacardi, which is in Bermuda. And I was supposed to go down there and work with 400 of their managers. But what happened is COVID came along, everything got canceled, couldn't do that. And then we said, well, what if we did it by Zoom? And they said, well, if we do it by Zoom, we could have all 4,000 of our employees from all over the world take it. So we actually had more benefit instead of less. But again, you have to look, the challenges always give you an opportunity for growth. All right, we talked about the new better. Now, as I said, you have to give up all blaming. Think of the things we blame: the economy, high prices, the pandemic, the lockdowns, our governments, the media, the traffic, the weather, the mergers and acquisitions, new systems, other countries. People blame the US, the UK, the EU, China. I'm sure you've blamed another OECS country in your negotiations at times. Competitors, new regulations. We blame immigrants right now all over the world. We see that happening. Unfortunately, people are traveling and people are treating them very badly because they're afraid that they're blaming the immigrants for what's not working in their country, when that's really not the reason. We blame our employees, we blame our boss, we blame our team members, our parents, our children, our neighbors. You get the idea. Well, if you want to be successful, you've got to give up blaming, because blaming leaves you in the consciousness of being a victim. And so it's hard. We're conditioned to do that. When things don't work, we don't want to take that responsibility and say, okay, what I'm doing is not working. I've got to figure out a better way to work with those people, or to change my mindset, or to find new skills that perhaps are difficult to learn, find new resources, whatever it might be. We also have to give up complaining about other people. Complaining and blaming are kind of similar, but complaining is when you do it with a lot of people and they all nod in agreement, and you kind of get this idea that you're right. Often it's called a bar. It's called the Ain't It Awful Club. People get together and bitch and moan about how bad things are. and it gives you an out to not solve it. In other words, these are responses. Blaming and complaining are responses that do not produce better outcomes. Many of you remember Martin Luther King. He was a famous civil rights leader in America. He gave a great speech once called "I Have a Complaint." Do you remember that? Of course you don't. What was it called? It was called "I Have a Dream," because Martin Luther King knew that you can't get anywhere you want to go by complaining. It doesn't produce a better result. You have to focus on the dream, talk about the dream, enroll other people in the vision, and you have to get good at that, not blame them for being stubborn, but take responsibility for not figuring out how to be convincing enough to get change to happen. And Martin Luther King, before he was assassinated, got a lot of change to happen, civil rights law in the United States with President Lyndon Johnson, so on and so forth. So again, always focus on what you want instead of talking about what you don't want. This is a critical success principle. And you have to give up making excuses. Yeah, there's all kinds of weather issues, there's economic issues, there's political issues that you have to deal with, people's egos and so forth. But those are not excuses. They're just things, they're opportunities to solve a problem. This is a boy, I love to share this when I talk. His name is Matty Christensen. This was when he was 11 years old. You'll notice he has no legs past the knees and no arms past the elbows. Those are prosthetic plastic legs, and that's an arm on his left hand with a lacrosse cage at the end of that arm. He was the pitcher on his little league team in New York that went to the state finals, and they were in the last two teams. He was in that final game for the championship. They lost by 2 runs, but the point was, that's how good he was. And he said to me when I interviewed him, he said, "Mr. Canfield, it's not an obstacle. It's simply a problem to be solved." It's an 11-year-old. What if we had that same attitude? There are things you have to deal with. You have to have strategies for dealing with them and come up with solutions. Find out other people who perhaps solved that problem, or be creative and try things until you find one that works. He said, you have to give up all your excuses and you have to become solution oriented, always looking for the solution, focusing on the vision, focusing on what you want. And so one of the phrases I always want people to learn and use in their work is, well, if it could be done, how would we do it? Most people spend a lot of time talking about why it can't be done. And so you want to always start with the assumption that it can be done, and then ask the question of the group or yourself, well, if it could happen, how would we do it? And I want to share a story with you to illustrate that. As was mentioned in my introduction, I wrote a book, a whole series of books, over 200 books, called the Chicken Soup for the Soul series. We've sold 500 million books. It's 500 million books in 47 languages around the world. And there's a story in the first book called the 333 story. It's written by Bob Proctor. And Bob writes a story about living up in Canada. And there was a big tornado that came through, much like the hurricanes that come through your area of the world. And what happens was, there was a town called Barrie that was pretty much wiped out. And all the houses were, roofs were blown off and trees were blown down and cars were squashed and all that kind of stuff. And this one guy who owned 3 radio stations said to his staff, I want to have a meeting. They all came together. And he said, what if we could raise $3 million in 3 days in 3 hours? Meaning that 3 hours, we'll do a telethon, a marathon, if you will, telethon, and we'll raise $3 million in a 3-hour telethon on the radio stations. And we'll need other radio stations to come along. And he said, here's the deal. Now we're going to look at why we can't do it and how we can do it. And he said, I'm just going to basically cross that part out. I don't want to hear any ideas about why we can't, how hard it will be, why it's impossible. But if we could do it, how would we do it? And so someone said, well, geez, we need more than our 3 radio stations. And they said, okay, so we'll have to call up other people, see if they'll play. Well, why would they want to give up their time? And he said, well, what if we could get 2 of the national television anchors, like, in our country, NBC, ABC, CBS, CNN, that kind of thing. What if we could get the 2 top anchors from television to host this show for 3 hours? That would be a huge draw because everyone would think it was really important. And they came up with idea after idea after idea. What happened was 3 days later, in a 3-hour period, which is a 3-hour telethon, radiothon, I guess you'd call it. What happens is they raised $3 million. And so literally you can do things very quickly if you focus on the how and not the reasons why you can't do it. All right. So I saw this quote on the internet a couple of weeks ago. It says, you can either make 1 million excuses or you can make $1 million, but you can't do both. And so you have to give up excuse making if you're going to get there. And you could say you could either make a million excuses or you can make a win-win agreement that works for everybody. But the point being, all the reasons why it won't work or why the other person's the problem is going to be just a response that gets you nowhere. All right. I remember I was at a conversation with Bill Clinton. It was after he was president. George Bush was the president. And Bill Clinton was asked a question. He said, what do you think about George Bush's policy on, I forget what the policy was. And Bill Clinton said something very interesting. He said, all your decisions depend on your assumptions. They depend on your paradigm, what it is you believe about the world. And he said, George and I have a different assumption that we operate from. I believe there are unlimited resources, and our job is to steward those resources so that everybody wins. Everybody gets something so that they can survive, they can get a good education, they can be healthy, they can, feed their families. So for me, it's about distribution. So when I look at other countries, I don't try to manipulate them. I don't try to take advantage of them, take all their natural resources, because I think there's enough for everybody and we can negotiate that and make it work. So George Bush, he feels that there's not enough resources for everybody. And therefore, his job is to serve Americans and get the most resources he can for Americans. And that's why we govern differently. So I want you to think not too deeply right now, but take some time later today, tomorrow, whatever, and think about what are the beliefs or the assumptions you make about being able to achieve the outcomes that you want, because those assumptions about how people are, how much there is, what needs to happen, what's the ultimate outcome, what's possible is going to affect your behavior. Is again, your mindset, what you believe determines what your outcomes are going to be at a great, great level. All right. So there are only three responses you have any control over. And the first is thoughts, what we've been talking about, your mindset. The second are the images that you hold in your mind. So what are the pictures? What do you picture? Some of the images we hold are things from the past that kind of control us. Never going to have that happen again. Don't want to be embarrassed like that again. So we have those kinds of images in our mind. We also have our dreams, those images. We can learn to visualize like a successful person. Successful people visualize positive outcomes. Unsuccessful people visualize all the reasons why it won't work, visualize failure. They come from fear. When the pandemic hit, I did about 100 summits all around the world, things like this, where I get on and talk to people. There'd be like maybe 8 speakers over the course of the day. We were all trying to help people get out of fear, because when you're in fear and you're visualizing things you don't want, like getting COVID, losing your job, losing your home, what happens is your energies in the amygdala, which is in the back part of your brain, instead of your prefrontal cortex, which is where creativity, rational thinking, ideas come from. And when we're in fear, that gets shut down. And so we want to have positive images that make us feel like, wow, that's possible. I can see it. I can dream it. I can make it happen. And the third thing is our behavior, what we say and what we do, or what we don't say and don't do. Sometimes we hold back what we need to do. So thoughts, images, and behaviors, only things you have any control over in your life. Everything else you have influence on, but you don't have control. Now, every thought you think is sending out a vibration. Now, think of a radio station. Think of, you're listening to me right now. My voice in these images are going out over Wi-Fi to a central computer that's being then sent out over Wi-Fi to all of your computers. And so what happens is that you are hearing my thoughts. And when you think a thought, we now know that your thoughts also travel. We know they travel around the entire Earth, 25,000 miles. We know they travel all the way to the moon because of experiments that have been done. And they travel with information and with energy, your belief. Are you optimistic? Are you scared? Are you angry? And then what's the information? Just like a radio signal says, oh, this is KMBC, and this is the song, Good Morning Everybody, or whatever the song might be. So what happens is that you are getting a signal that says this is the wavelength of the person or the station, and this is the information, the song, the information, like I'm speaking to you right now. So literally, we did experiments with astronauts who were on the moon almost 250,000 miles away, where they would open envelopes at random times. There'd be a shape in there, like a square, a circle, a triangle, whatever. And students down at Duke University in North Carolina in the US would close their eyes and see if they could tune into the astronauts and then draw whatever they thought the astronauts were looking at. And they were getting it right way beyond statistical probability because they were able to tune in. So our thoughts travel, and your thoughts are impacting people. They're attracting people to you. They're attracting people to support you, to decide if they want to work with you, etc. So you always want to be thinking positive outcomes. This is going to work. What do I want? What's my vision? Hold strong to that, because your thoughts are, in fact, impacting things a lot more than you know, a lot more than you know. So your mindset is really, really critical. In America, we have a woman named Sarah Blakely. Some of you may have heard of a product called Spanx. She is the first female billionaire who built her whole company with no investment from outside people. And she said in a recent interview, excuse me, that mindset is the single most important thing you have as an entrepreneur. And that would be true for any position you might be in: government official, nonprofit executive, employee in a company. You have to work on your mindset daily. So the things I'm teaching you today are things you need to think about and reinforce and remind yourself about on a daily level to become one of the top performers in the world, which every one of you can do. Every one of you can do. All right. So my big mentor was a man named W. Clement Stone. He was worth $600 million when I was in my early 20s. I worked for him and his foundation for a couple of years, teaching something called achievement motivation. How do you motivate people to achieve more? Excuse me. And he said, you have to become an inverse paranoid. Now, we all know a paranoid is someone who believes the world is out to get them. And he said an inverse paranoid is someone who believes the world is plotting to do them good. That, you believe the world is set up in your favor. The universe is on your side. Just that assumption, when Bill Clinton was talking about the assumption you make is going to affect everything you do. And so it's critical that you come from a positive attitude, no matter what's going on around you. What's going on around you is just stuff. It's your ability to handle that with your mind, and then what ideas you come up with and what strategies you come up with. Why is it that some people get rich in the middle of a pandemic? Why is it that some people succeed politically where other people fail? Why is it some people can enroll people in their vision and other people don't do that? It all has to do with your beliefs and how you treat people with love, with envisioning, having them buy into your vision, having enthusiasm, having joy, affirming and valuing people. All these things are part of that, believing that the world is on your side. If you knew that everything you wanted, the universe wanted you to have it. When I say universe, you can substitute God, any word you have, source energy, infinite intelligence. The idea is, if you believe it's on your side, you're going to act really differently. It was Einstein, the great genius, who once said, you have to make a choice in life. You act as if nothing's a miracle or everything's a miracle. There's no in between. And so I act as if everything's on my side. Everything works. And I've had incredible success, running businesses that earn billions of dollars, having 500 million books sold. I don't think anyone else, maybe other than the Bible, has ever done that, in the Quran and things like that. So anyway, I want you to be an inverse paranoid. And that leads into the next principle, which is believing that anything you want is possible. I don't care where you start from, how old you are, but believing it's possible. Napoleon Hill, again, who wrote Think and Grow Rich, said, whatever the mind can conceive and believe, the mind can achieve. So if you can think it up, which you're going to do in a minute, because I'm going to challenge you to create a breakthrough goal that's way beyond what you currently think is possible, and then just choose to believe it. Think of this. Belief is just a choice. It's something you choose to believe. You can choose to believe. Many of us believed in Santa Claus when we were kids. The reality is, that we were able to do that for 5-6 years. Could you just choose to believe that your goal is achievable for 1 year? So it's just a choice. You simply choose to act as if. It's an act as if. We talk about faith in the Christian religion. If you act as if God exists, it's a faith you have. And if you act as if long enough, it becomes an experience, not just a belief. All right. So whatever the mind can conceive and believe, the mind can achieve. Muhammad Ali, who I'm sure most of you know of, he said, impossible is a big word thrown around by small people who find it easier to live in a world they've been given than to explore the power they have to change it. Impossible is not a fact, it's an opinion. And you're here to change the world, your world, the world of your organization, the world of your, the organization of states, Eastern Caribbean states. So the reality is that you all are in this possibility game. And when he was interviewed once, he said, I don't believe in impossible. I believe in I'm possible. I can do anything. And that's the attitude that you have to approach everything with if you want to really break through. Quick story. This is Cliff Young. At 61 years old, he decided to enter a race. Now, he was 61. He'd never run a race before in his life, never run a 10K, never run a marathon. And he was a sheep farmer. He had never read Runner's World magazine. He didn't have a coach. He just decided he wanted to run a race. It had been a dream he had. And the only race that was available at a time when he was an 875-kilometer race, way much longer than a marathon. And so he shows up at the racetrack, the starting line, I should say, to get his number. And they looked at him. He was dressed like in civilian clothes. He didn't have like the usual Reebok, Nike, Asics running gear. He didn't have running shoes on. He had construction boots and galoshes in case it rained. He said, they said, sir, have you ever run a race before? He said, no. He said, we're worried about you. You're 61 years old. You've never run a race. You might have a heart attack. He said, well, I raise sheep and I chase them around with my dog. Sometimes if there's a storm coming in, I may not even sleep for 2 days. I just run around and we get all the sheep in the pens and safe. I think I can do it. I'm a vegetarian. I get up when the sun gets up. I go to sleep when it goes down. He said, I'm healthy. So they weren't sure, but they gave him a number. And when the race started, everyone else was like in their 20s and 30s, maybe a few people in their 40s. They all took off running really fast. And Cliff was kind of shuffling along, kind of like you see him in the low right-hand picture there. And they called it the Cliff Young Shuffle. And he was not running all that fast. But he had a secret that even he didn't know. He did not know that when you run a multi-day race, because this was about a 6.5 day race, that you were supposed to sleep every night for 6 hours. So the first night he was so far behind everyone, no one told him to go to bed and sleep. That happened for a couple of days. But because they were sleeping and he wasn't, he was catching up on them. And on the fourth night, he passed everybody while they were sleeping and continued running for 6 days straight without ever stopping to sleep. And he broke the record by 12 hours. Now, the next year, you had 12 people who did the Cliff Young Shuffle, didn't sleep. They were all younger, and Cliff came in, I think, like 10th that year instead of first. But basically, they renamed the race after him, called the Cliff Young Australian 6-day race. Why do I tell you the story? Because I tell you the story because you have beliefs about what's possible and not possible. And no one thought it was possible to run for 6 days without sleep. And so they didn't try. And yet Cliff was able to do that. And it's kind of like when the guy broke the 4-minute mile for the first time, Roger Bannister. No one thought it was possible. When he did it the next year, I think it was 11 people broke the 4-minute mile. And it wasn't because there was better cereal to eat in the morning. It was because they had a new belief. And so a lot of times it's what you believe. It's not true. It's getting in your way. So you want to study the beliefs of successful people. That's why I recommend reading books like I told you at the beginning. Read other autobiographies of successful people. Watch TED Talks. Watch YouTube videos of successful people. Those are the things that are going to change your mindset to believe it's possible. Because if someone else that grew up Black in the South and was a victim of racism in America could go to Harvard and become a lawyer and become successful and become a CEO of a company, and you're going, well, maybe I could too. Someone who was abused, maybe raped, and went on to become a successful business person, you go, wow, maybe I can too. So literally, if someone else can do it, you can do it. And that's what's great about human behavior, is we know that other people inspire us. What is inspiring is other people, like the movie Rocky. It inspired us because someone overcame a belief that it couldn't happen. So you want to inspire yourself as much as possible. Now, I love this quote from Morgan Freeman. He said, audience believe what you believe. It's a matter of believing yourself. If I believe me, then you've got no choice. None at all. So when you believe something and you believe it's possible to do it, and you're enrolling people in it to support you, to believe in you, to invest in you, to hire you, to give you the job responsibility, whatever it might be, you want to be confident that you're going to get it. And that confidence is what's going to take you to where you want to go. Okay. So we said every thought you think is sending out a vibration, a powerful signal with information and energy. And John Hagelin, who's a physicist, Harvard-trained physicist, um, studied quantum physics, said the power of a force field created by an intention. So when you have an intention to create something, the power of the field that's created by that is the square of the number of people holding the same intention at the same time. So when you have 1,000 people in the OECS all holding the same intention at the same time, so you all agree, like maybe at 8 o'clock in the morning, you're all going to spend 5 minutes visualizing this treaty signed or this compact or this deal going through or whatever it might be. That's 1,000 times 1,000. That force field is 1,000,000. If 2 people are holding it, it's 2 times 2 is 4. It's better than 1. So it is a square of the number. So this is why it's important to enroll your team, enroll your fellow people, enroll the people you're working with, negotiating with, supporting, etc., to hold the same vision you're holding. That's why a good leader is able to engage the masses and get everyone focused on the same page. John F. Kennedy was a leader who did that. Barack Obama was able to do that. Donald Trump, in my opinion, really divided our nation. And we have 2 very difficult camps right now, fighting over the vaccines, fighting over economics, fighting over who should do what, freedoms and so forth. And both sides think they're right. There was never a unified vision that was created, and that created a huge problem in our country. So I think it's important that you learn how to enroll people in your vision. All right. So as I said, you need to enroll the whole team in the same vision. So I want you to know that one of the most critical principles is to decide what you want. Clarity is power. And we're going to look today at what is your vision of success. Each of you has a different role, which brings you here today. But when you think about it, why are you here? What is your vision of what it is you want to see happen? That if it happened, you would then go, oh, this was successful. That was a successful project. I achieved what I wanted to achieve. Because without that clear vision, there's going to be no success. You can't measure it. You can't decide if you got there, etc. So Buckminster Fuller, who was on the picture of Time magazine, he was a genius. He had 55 honorary doctorates. He said, clarity is power. If you have clarity of the outcome you want, you're like probably 75% of the way to the goal. You have to be clear, what is the solution you're looking to create? All right. So the problem most people have is they're unwilling to commit to the vision they want because they don't see how they can create it. In other words, people are rarely willing to commit to creating something before they know how to do it, because they're afraid if they don't know how to do it, they won't be able to do it. And now they're going to be hanging out there as a failure. Unfortunately, the way things work in your mind and in the universe is until you commit to the what, the how often doesn't show up. But as soon as you're committed to what you want, then if you use the tools I'll teach you in the remaining minutes we have, what happens is the how will start to emerge, both in terms of your own inner creative thoughts and also your ability to perceive resources in the environment that you never saw before or never perceived before that were always there, and the ability to attract those to you so that you can be more successful. We all know what a GPS system in a car is. We put in a destination, whether it's on your cell phone or in your car, and I can go from my house at 929 Fruteria in Santa Barbara, and I can end up down in Bonitas in LA. And I don't have to know how. I just put the destination in, and whatever system I have in my car, it says, take a right turn onto the 101, proceed for 87 miles, get off at Hawthorne Boulevard, whatever. And so the house shows up. So we call that GPS, Global Positioning Satellite. But you have an inner GPS, which we call your goal producing system. And that is your subconscious mind, which most of us have never learned how to activate. And this is why the Walt Disneys of the world, the Bill Gateses of the world, the Nelson Mandelas of the world, the people that we look to that are the visionaries that are producing huge results, they are people that are constantly focusing on the what, not knowing necessarily the how will happen, but people get so excited about the what, they attract those people. Like when Kennedy said, we're going to put a man on the moon by the end of the decade. That was in the 1960s. No one knew how to do that. It wasn't possible at that time. And yet all these people said, I want to participate. I want to be a scientist that is involved with that project. And we got there by 1968, 2 years ahead of schedule. So the reality is and I would say this too, the bigger your goal, the more exciting, the more kind of outrageous and positive, the more likely you attract people. If Martin Luther King said, I want to open a chain of 7-Eleven convenience stores in Alabama, I don't know that a whole lot of people would have gone on buses to go down to Alabama to make that happen. But when he said, I want to have a country where boys and girls are treated based on the quality of their character rather than the color of their skin, lots of people, including myself, got involved in civil rights. Some went on marches, bus rides, etc., and were willing to put their lives on the line because the vision was so big, it was so meaningful, it was so inspiring. So make sure your goals inspire other people to want to help you achieve them. All right. So I want you to dream big as we go into this little exercise we're going to do. General Wesley Clark, who used to be the head of NATO forces for the Allied forces of NATO, also he ran for the candidacy of the Democratic Party to be president, didn't win, but he played at that level in our world. When I interviewed him, he said, it doesn't take any more effort to dream a big dream than it takes to dream a small dream. So think about that. You don't have to scrunch up your face more. You don't have to burn more brain cells. You just choose to put another zero behind it, or 2 zeros, or more people, more impact, whatever it is you want. So I want you, as we set a breakthrough goal today, to dream as big as you want, not limited by what you think currently is possible. Richard Branson, who started Virgin Airlines, said, if your dreams don't scare you, they're too small. And think about this. Just not too long ago, what did he do? July 12th, first commercial manned space flight. And he was up there in space. And then a week later, Jeff Bezos did it. And, you've got the other guy from Tesla doing it. So what are we doing? Big dreams. And those dreams come true because they're willing to dream it and put energy behind it and resources behind it and make those dreams come true. So I want you to dream big today. And so I want you to think about what we call a BHAG. And a BHAG is a big, hairy, audacious goal. This was my mentor, W. Clement Stone. He wrote a book called The Success System That Never Fails. And he asked all of us when I was working with him, I want you to set a big, hairy, audacious goal, a goal that's so big that if you achieve it, you'll know it's only because of what I taught you. And it will help you become someone worth becoming. In other words, it will elevate your capacity. It'll elevate your competency. It'll elevate your status in the world because you are willing to take on this goal and achieve it. So today, I'm going to ask you to create a BHAG for yourself. Now, Mark Victor Hansen, my co-author on the Chicken Soup books back in 1992, we set a BHAG to sell 1 billion books and inspire 1 billion lives through our books, through our speeches, through our audio programs, trainings, and philanthropy. And as a result of setting that goal, we sold 350 million books just in China. We're in 47 languages, including French, which I know many of you speak, and 600 million copies worldwide. We've been on television shows that have been viewed by 40 million people, like Oprah Winfrey and so forth. So we probably already reached that 1 billion people. We're still going for the 1 billion books as well. And in India, a book is usually read by 6 to 10 people. So again, goal achieved. When I was in Dubai in the UAE, this was Mohammed Maktoum. He wrote a book called My Vision, which I bought at the airport. He wrote a vision for his entire country. And he said, the joy of existence is to do something one has not done before or did not expect to do at all. Therefore, we are eagerly anticipating your creativity. So he was asking a whole country to come together and create an amazing country. If you get a chance, get a copy of the book, The Magic of Thinking Big. It's a really good book. It definitely had a huge impact on my life. But the importance of having big dreams. Here's a vision for a whole country. What's the vision for the OECS and so forth? Your portion of that. When I was in Qatar, developed the national vision for 2030. And the whole country has this vision of what they need to do. They're going to run out of peak oil at some point. So they're moving now to growing their own food in greenhouses, having huge, what do I want to call them, sporting arenas and so forth, so that people can, in fact, achieve a whole lot more income. So I'm going to ask you 2 things, and then we'll open this up for a little bit of Q&A. But this is a question I want you to ask people when you're starting to work with them. If we were sitting here 3 years from today, and you were to look back over those 3 years to today, what would have had to happen for you to feel happy about your progress? So I'll repeat that so you can get it down. If we were sitting here 3 years from today, the essence is what would have had to have happened in the last 3 years for you to feel happy about your progress. And what that does, it gets everyone focusing on the vision and what they would need to see happen for them to feel happy. And then when you're negotiating with people, the question always has to be, what works best for your group and for my group for now as we're negotiating and into the future? Because a lot of times we go only thinking about what's best for our group, like George Bush was always talking about earlier. But you always want to be looking at what's best for the highest good of all concerned. And when you do that, amazing things happen. All right. So I'm going to have you set a breakthrough goal. And a breakthrough goal is a goal that will quantum leap your success. And one of mine was to train 1 million people to teach my work by 2030. We now have 3,500 people doing that in 117 countries. And for you, it's going to be a goal that would quantum leap your personal, professional success, either one, and require you to grow to achieve it. A goal is something measurable in time and space. How much by when? And I'll give you an example. I'd like to increase my income. That's not a goal, but I will earn an annual income of $50,000 by 5 p.m. September 22nd, 2022. That is a measurable goal. So again, how much by when? So I want you to think about a goal right now. If you were to have a goal that you could achieve 1 year from now that would quantum leap your career or your company's success or your nonprofit success or your government's success, whatever it is you're doing, what would that goal be for you? A breakthrough goal that is accomplished by September 22nd, 2022. And I'm going to be quiet for about 15 seconds, let you think about that. And I encourage you to write it down. Very good. In just one more minute, then I'll open up to Q&A. I want you to use the power of affirmations and visualization to help reach your goal. And you want to have a statement that says, I'm so happy and grateful that I am now, overseeing a project that's got X millions of dollars in it, that's effectively, ending hunger on our island or whatever it might be. But you're stating as if it's happening in the present tense. And every morning you're going to state that statement. You're going to then close your eyes and visualize what would you see if you would let you know you've achieved that goal. So your eyes are closed. You're imagining, what would you see? Would it be a contract? Would it be a letter of appreciation? Would it be the book you wrote in the windows of the bookstore? Would it be a letter from your boss saying, great job? Would it be looking in the mirror at your new body where you lost all that weight? Whatever it might be. That's the key here, to effectively have a affirmation. I'm so happy and grateful that I'm now, present tense. Add the feelings you would feel. This is critical. How would you feel? And then feel those feelings in the present moment. There's a lot of research behind that, which I don't have time to go into. And then visualize the picture. That is what will get your brain to start coming up with solutions. It's what will attract people to you. It will do all that. And then one last thought here, and that is you must take action. One of my friends came up with this phrase, the law of Goya, called get off your ass. You've got to do the work. And we teach something called the rule of 5. Do 5 things every day that will lead to the achievement of your breakthrough goal. If you do 5 things a day, that's like going to a tree with an axe. I don't care how big the tree is. If you take 5 big cuts at that tree with the axe every day, eventually the tree is coming down. You do 5 action steps a day toward that breakthrough goal. What's going to happen is by the end of the year, you've done over 1,800 actions. That's enough to get any tree to fall down. It's enough to get your goal to happen. So I recommend you make a little 3x5 card that looks like that. And every day, write down 5 things you can do to make your goal come true. And then make sure you take those actions. And one of the main actions you want to do is ask, ask, ask. Don't hesitate to ask people for things you need. Successful people ask people. It doesn't make you look weak or ignorant. It makes you look smart because you get answers from people that can help you get to where you want to go. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a moment here, and we will open this up for questions. Let me get out of there.
All right, thank you so very much. It is just it's very impressive and amazing to me how you're able to cover so much in such a short period of time. Thank you very much for that. And Yvonne, I absolutely love it. You ask persons to write down their goal. And, Yvonne here said, my goal is to increase my income by 300% in 3 years, reaching at least 4 continents, serving entrepreneurs. So we're going for those big, hairy, audacious goals, correct?
That's great. I love it. Absolutely. Yeah, you want a goal that's going to stretch you, and it's a little unbelievable. But my first goal was to make $100,000 in a year. I was making $8,000, and I made a picture of $100,000 bill. I took $100 bill, put 3 more zeros after it, blew it up, put it on my ceiling, and every morning I wake up, I see that, I close my eyes and say, I'm so happy and grateful. I'm making 100,000 a year. And within a year, I made $92,000. I didn't make 100, but I made 12 times more than I was making before. And then the following year, I made 100. And my wife said, do you think it'll work for $1 million? I said, I don't know. Let's see. So we had a
Let's
goal to
go.
make $1 million in a year. And sometimes I'll show a check on a slide. It's made out to me for $1,130,328. And that was for book royalties for Chicken Soup for the Soul. And that year I made $6 million from my books and my speaking. So little Jackie Canfield, who grew up, whose dad never made more than $8,000 in a year, came from West Virginia, kind of a backward state at that time in America. It works, but you have to do it. You have to do it.
Right. Well, I love the fact that you use the acronym Goya, get off your ass. I have about 13 questions and I'm going to try to get in because I know that you do have a hard stop in the next 8 minutes or so.
Yeah.
So Momo says, the talk is motivational, but there are some realities and invisible barriers for some of the global South. A small example, many Caribbean people can't, for example, invest in the US stock market as a retail investor. Many US-based retail investors cannot access pre-market or aftermarket trading or even angel investing. So what is possible is not always probable. Should we be more realistic versus idealistic, taking into account certain barriers we have and actively seek opportunities? That's from Momo.
Barriers are always there. What they do is they stretch us to become more creative. You could probably create a syndicate of people in America that would invest. You'd give them their money. They would pay you the money that comes back from that. You'd have to have a high trust level, maybe a contract. But, there's all kinds of ways to get around those kind of things. But if you start with the assumption it's not possible, you won't try. And if you think about, somebody's probably done it, start asking people, how do you do it? What did you do? What would you recommend? And then you'll usually find an answer.
Absolutely. Short and sweet. Howard asked, could auto-suggestion be used to change our negative beliefs? And for persons going auto-suggestion, it's you having the ability to tell yourself physically how to change or alter.
There's 2 kinds of affirmations. One is an affirmation for a goal, like I'm so happy and grateful I'm now earning $100,000 a year. The other affirmation is more about yourself. I am a person that can do anything I want. I'm achieving my personal body weight. I am a competent person. I'm lovable. I'm, people like being around me. Money flows to me easily and, under the grace of God, all those kind of things. So you can make affirmations and use auto-suggestion. And you can even add self-hypnosis to that if you want to study that. There's EFT tapping. You can learn how to tap on these acupressure points. Just look up EFT tapping on YouTube. There's all kinds of videos for that. Very, very powerful to get rid of limiting negative beliefs.
All right. Jack, what are your recommended steps to meditate and program your goals/beliefs? How do you get your unconscious mind to believe?
Well, basically it's repetition. And every time if someone tells you you're stupid as a child, they tell you 100 times, after a while you begin to believe it. So the same thing is true with an affirmation. Yeah, you can put little cards around on your mirror and so forth, to do that as well. But for me, I meditate every morning, 20 minutes. And the first 15, I get really relaxed. And then I do my affirmations. I visualize what I want. So if you do that every day, after a while, you've got hundreds of hours of you meditating and believing and seeing you doing and being the kind of person you want to be. But it's repetition over time. It's very rare you can change something like that unless you have a really good therapist or a really good technique. There are techniques out there like EFT tapping. I would recommend that.
Right. Right. We have a question here. It says, well, some dreams don't need to be realized or shouldn't be. What Richard Branson, Elon Musk, and Jeff Bezos are pushing with space tourism, for example, very likely will have a negative impact on the environment, biodiversity, people, poverty, just to name a few. It's nice to dream, but what if your dream has a negative social impact on yourself, others, and other future generations? What then?
Well, my personal purpose statement is inspiring and empowering people to live their highest vision in the context of love and joy in harmony with the highest good of all concerned. Now, I use, Richard Branson as an example, because
Mhm.
he dreamed big and he achieved it. I'm not a big, I don't support space travel, quite frankly. I think we ought to solve the problems here on Earth rather than trying to figure out how to colonize the moon. And
I heard.
we spend billions of dollars when we ought to be feeding people, educating people, getting people out of poverty, starting businesses that matter for people that need that support. So I agree with the question. Always be asking, what's the negative impact of this if I were to do it, and to try to look to minimize that or have no negative
Mhm.
impact, because there are too many people who let their greed and their ego get in the way. Some people can make cases for space travel. I'm not one of them.
All right. What is your advice on taking risks, in order to stretch yourself, grow, improve? What is your advice on taking risks and getting out of your comfort zone?
You cannot grow without getting out of your comfort zone. Your comfort zone means I'm comfortable because this is what I do every day. It's comfortable. Everything you don't have that you want lives outside your comfort zone. So you have to be willing to be uncomfortable every day. Successful people are willing to be uncomfortable. One of the things that a recent psychologist wrote a book about was the idea that one of the things that stops people from being successful is their unwillingness to feel uncomfortable feelings, to ask for, to be uncomfortable when they make requests, to be uncomfortable about confronting people. All of those things, you have to give that up. That doesn't mean you have to go out and do something radical immediately. Take little baby steps along the way. Your first talk is not going to be to 10,000 people. It might be to 30, and then to 100, and then to 500, and so forth. But risk is required, and self-confidence is the result of surviving a risk. The reason you become confident, you're a confident speaker because you've spoken and you survived. And every time you do, you feel more confident, right?
Absolutely. The outcome gets better and better. And each time the outcome gets better, it feeds my confidence.
Exactly. I'm with you on that. Okay.
All right. So Michelle says, what's your advice for getting out of a temporary rut or setback, especially if you're normally positive and a believer? So many of us have been great believers, but with the pandemic and quite a lot of crises, you find yourself in a rut. It's hard to get out of it. Any advice?
Setbacks are part of the process. If everything was easy, we'd all be rich, we'd all be thin, we'd all be happy. It's not the case. Why? Because there are obstacles. It's learning to handle those obstacles, which builds your capacity, builds your confidence, builds your patience, builds your courage. No one would have to ever become courageous if everything was easy. So I believe that part of the goal of life is to become a master. And you'll become a master. Like in karate, you go through different belts. You have to master harder and harder things in order to become a black belt, a second degree black belt, and so forth. So that's part of the game. So see those obstacles and those ruts as opportunities to learn something new. And, the main thing about getting out of a rut is, number one, surround yourself with positive people, listen to something positive every day, like go to YouTube, go to, all these, you can buy tapes and CDs and download MP3s and so forth of successful people, motivational speakers, and basically get your mindset change and then start doing something different. Because a rut is something where you keep digging the same hole over and over and over, and it looks like forward progress, but you're not going anywhere really. You've got to do something different. So just anything different at all that you think might get you out, and surround yourself with something positive.
Did he shift? Did he? I'm not too certain. I know that he has frozen on my side. Has he frozen on yours?
Oh, am I frozen? I'm sorry. I don't know what to do with that. Am I still frozen? Okay.
Okay, no, you came back. You came back. Okay.
Very good. I was in a rut. I was in a rut there with our friend.
No, man, that is fine. And it is technology. So the last question, definitely the last question is, as we are at SDM, a lot of it will require digital transformation and just coming out of crises, a cultural shift. So a very good question, well, I had it right here, is now, how do you get people who have scarcity beliefs, who are very, very negative, how do you get them to buy into your goal, to buy into your dream and your vision? Last question.
Well, that's where you have to become a persuasive speaker. You have to have stories of people like them who got out. When I started my career as a teacher in an all-black inner city high school in Chicago, a lot of gangs and all that kind of stuff. And none of my kids thought they were ever going to be anything. And I told them they could. They were going like, what's a guy from Harvard doing teaching in the ghetto? You could be a lawyer now making lots of money. And I said, because I want to empower you guys to live your dreams. That's what I love. I love to empower people to live their dreams. And at least half of my students are now CEOs of companies. They're authors. They're doing really, really well because they heard me talk to them for a year about it, how it's possible. I told them stories every day of people like them who got out, who succeeded. I read magazines and articles and shared those with my students. So basically it's repetition of a message, and you have to have a message that's inspiring, and you become a motivational speaker. And if you can do that, then people will get enrolled. But it takes some time. It doesn't happen overnight. That's why it takes years to raise children, you know. But if you do it consistently over time, eventually it happens. Look at Oprah Winfrey. She was on TV for years convincing people, women usually in the middle of the day, that their lives could be better. And a lot of women went on to become better. They went for their dreams because she talked to them day after day and said, you can do this. And so it's
absolutely. Absolutely. And I think people also look, if you set the example and they see you actually doing the work and executing as well, they tend to buy in. Jack Canfield, thank you so very much for your great presentation. I see the comments in the chat. Thank you. You're a very busy person. We really appreciate it. We wish you all the best with your training and authoring of other books. SDM thanks you. OECS.
Thank you so much. I am really thrilled to have done it. Thank you, Terry. I appreciate it. And I wish all of you a great life. And I will go now and do this again for another group. All right, everybody.
No, absolutely. Go right ahead. And for those of you who are attending, Jack Canfield will have to run. He actually has another engagement and stayed back a little while just so that he could take your questions and try to answer as many of them as possible. We've gone ahead. We've launched a poll because, again, we want to hear from you. Feedback is always valuable. OECS values your feedback, and they want to know what they've done absolutely well, how the experience has been, and where we can improve. So we just ask for you to take a couple seconds just to answer the poll. I take the opportunity to thank our interpreters, our translators who are in the background, the back end, who've been doing a fantastic job at interpreting on behalf of our Francophones. You know, we do have a very large French Caribbean presence, and we want it to be very, very inclusive. So thank you for the participation. I see the energy, I see the questions, I see persons bringing their own ideas to the table, which is what the SDM space is all about. So I hope you felt energized. I hope we will be leveling up. I hope that regardless of whether the outcome is what we expected or not, we will still be able to say we can do more. We can be more. How can we shift? How can we change? How can we adapt? And how can we be agile? Someone is asking, which island is Dr. Reed from? You can't tell from my accent. Would somebody like to tell that person who's asking what island I'm from? Would someone like to help them out? Jamaican, there you go. I am absolutely 100% Jamaican. So we're going to take a quick break. Well, not a quick break. It's actually a lunch hour. And I don't want you to go away from your computer and have your lunch all by yourself, because what OECS has done is that they have created a lunch hour that we're going to entitle an hour of creative excellence. The greatest creations needs an explanation. And we have this fantastic artist from St. Lucia, Anirin Edward, who will blow your mind. We acknowledge the talent in the region. And so this is our lunch hour. This is your lunch and learn. Please do enjoy and get back for your next session on time. Enjoy.